After my miscarriage, I overheard my husband telling a doctor to remove my uterus so his mistress's child could be the heir. He pretended to be loving, feeding me medicine while having an affair with the mistress in the hospital room. I threw a divorce agreement at him and fled abroad, but he chased me to beg for forgiveness, only for the mistress to go crazy and hit him, turning him into a vegetable. I should have left this marriage long ago. After the miscarriage, I unexpectedly overheard David Miller telling a doctor, "Find a way to drug my wife, then cut out her uterus so she can never get pregnant again." Then he placed his large hand on another woman's belly and instructed, "Give her the best pregnancy care plan. I want her child to be the Miller Corp heir." I knew this woman. She was a streamer for David Miller's company. I heard him sternly remind the doctor, "Also, make sure my wife recovers well. If this surgery leaves her with any complications, none of you will get away with it." My heart trembled. I never expected the man who loved me more than life itself to cheat. So I left, dropping a divorce agreement, and let them have their love. On the way back to my room, I felt completely disoriented, the scene I had just witnessed replaying in my mind. My husband, who cherished me as the apple of his eye and loved me to the bone, was secretly having an affair with another woman and having my uterus removed. Yet he knew that all I wanted was a child. A passing nurse gave me an envious look. Her husband booked this whole floor of the hospital so she wouldn't be disturbed, and he hired a private nurse to take care of her every need. And that's not enough, he stays by her side 24/7. I told him he was too much in love. When she miscarried and was bleeding, her husband's eyes were all swollen from crying. I've never seen a man care about his wife so much. I heard they were campus sweethearts who got married, and to marry her, he transferred his entire family's business assets into her name. If this were before, hearing such things would have made me feel incredibly happy. But now, it felt like there was a fly stuck in my throat, making me sickened. Just then, David Miller's enraged voice came from a nearby room. "A bunch of useless idiots. You can't even keep track of one person. If anything happens to Sarah, I'll kill every one of you." David Miller rarely lost his temper. The last time was when I was seriously ill, and no hospital could cure me. He was so desperate he almost smashed the hospital and even considered committing suicide with me. Looking at the veins throbbing on his forehead, I couldn't feel the same emotion as before. I spoke flatly, "David, I'm here." Seeing me, David Miller's eyes instantly lit up, and he rushed over to hug me. "Sarah, where did you go? Why didn't you tell me? I thought something had happened to you." His voice trembled with fear, sounding genuinely distressed. I subtly pushed him away. The room was stuffy. I went out for some fresh air. He relaxed, but his grip on my hand didn't loosen. Then, he took the bowl of medicine from the nurse and gently brought it to my lips. "Honey, it's time for your medicine." Looking at the bitter liquid medicine in the bowl, a chill ran down my spine, my mind filled with the scene I had just witnessed. "It's bitter. I don't want to drink it." Before, David Miller never refused my requests, but this time he uncharacteristically insisted. "You won't get better without medicine, and you won't be able to have a baby. Didn't you always want to have a baby with me?" He knew a baby was my weakness and was sure that by using a child as bait, I would fall into his trap. But I no longer trusted him. I slapped the bowl of medicine away. I said, "I'm not drinking it." David Miller's gentle face stiffened, and a flicker of displeasure crossed his eyes. I thought I could escape by knocking the medicine away, but the next second, everything went black, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, it was the next morning. A sense of dread washed over me. I pulled back the covers and saw a surgical scar on my belly. My world came crashing down. I wanted to confront David Miller, but I heard him explain, "Honey, you suddenly fainted last night. The doctor checked and found your uterus had cancer, so I had them remove it." Afraid I wouldn't believe him, he even showed me a medical report that indeed stated I had uterine cancer. If I hadn't personally seen him instructing the doctor, I probably would have been fooled. Looking at the jagged scar on my belly, my heart felt like it had been brutally torn in half, leaving only infinite despair. David Miller hugged me tenderly, comforting me. "Honey, I know you always wanted a child, but your health is more important. I don't want anything to happen to you. We can always adopt a child later. 2. I opened my mouth to speak, but the door was pushed open, and Chloe walked in carrying a fruit basket. Excuse me, I'm here on behalf of the company to visit Mrs. Miller. Chloe was a newly signed streamer for Miller Entertainment. She was very beautiful, had a perfect figure, and was particularly entertaining. Every live stream earned Miller Corp millions. No wonder David Miller liked her. David Miller's expression didn't change. He gave Chloe a slight nod of acknowledgement, then turned his attention back to me. But I knew that beneath the seemingly calm surface, currents were swirling. I turned my back to them and lay down, suppressing my emotions. I'm tired. I want to rest. I expected Chloe to leave, but she stayed, sitting beside David Miller, keeping watch over me. David Miller sat by the bed, gently massaging me. Chloe sat quietly next to him. It seemed like a harmonious scene of a loving couple, but no one knew that at the foot of the bed, hidden from view, Chloe was deliberately rubbing her leg against David Miller's. David Miller didn't stop her, letting her rub against him untie. She went too far. Only then did he reach out and grab her thigh, stopping her provocation. But Chloe didn't give up. She hugged David Miller from behind, rubbing against him like a cat. David Miller instinctively glanced at me, confirming that my eyes were closed and my breathing was even, that I had fallen asleep. Instantly bolder, he turned and pushed Chloe onto the nearby table, cupping her face and kissing her. But he quickly released her, his cold eyes seemingly warning her to behave. Yet Chloe was fearless and wrapped herself around him again. David Miller couldn't resist any longer. After glancing at me, he took Chloe's hand and led her out of the room. The moment the door closed, I opened my eyes. David Miller would never guess that all his interactions with Chloe had been reflected in the glass, allowing me to see everything clearly. I followed David Miller and Chloe to a corner. I hid behind a pillar, able to see the scene before me by leaning out slightly. David Miller was gripping Chloe's neck, gritting his teeth. Didn't I warn you to behave yourself in front of Sarah? Chloe wasn't afraid. She rubbed his arm playfully. Well, you've been so busy with her these past few days. The baby missed you. Then, she provocatively wrapped her arms around David Miller's neck and purred, Mr. Miller, haven't you always wanted to try it somewhere outside? Let's try it. There are no cameras on this floor, and your wife is asleep. No one will find out. Before David Miller could respond, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. David Miller froze for a moment, then cupped the back of Chloe's head and deepened the kiss. David, gentle, please, I'm afraid it's too much for the baby. Shut up, I know what I'm doing. I didn't dare watch what happened next. As I fled, I could still hear the muffled sounds of their intimacy. My heart felt like it was being brutally torn in half, a searing pain shooting through me. The man who said he only loved me and would cherish me forever was secretly meeting another woman behind my back. It felt like an invisible hand was slapping my face, an intense wave of shame threatening to drown me. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the floor, sprawled awkwardly and ridiculously. 3A passing nurse rushed over to help me up. Seeing the tears on my face, she mistook it for pain from falling and quickly comforted me, Mrs. Miller, please don't cry. Mr. Miller would be heartbroken if he saw you like this. Looking at the nurse's worried expressions, I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore and broke down crying. After crying myself out, I returned to my room and fell asleep. When I woke up, David Miller hadn't returned, but Chloe was standing at the foot of the bed, her face grim. There was no respect on her face. She looked at me scornfully, mocking, you saw what happened just now, didn't you? David loves me. I'm already pregnant with his child. I clenched my fists, trembling as I asked her, how long have you two been together? Chloe held up 3 fingers, smugly. 3 years. He met me at a dinner party 3 years ago and fell in love with me at first sight. He was with me the entire first night. Afterwards, he felt guilty towards you, which is why he transferred all the property under his name to you. Those things were originally meant for me and the baby. You stole what was ours. I bit my lip hard, suppressing the urge to hit her. Seeing this, Chloe became even more arrogant. Did you think he loves you very much? Actually, he comes to see me every night after you fall asleep. Even when I'm pregnant, he won't stop. To be honest, the day you miscarried, he wasn't at a business dinner at all. He was in bed with me, being intimate. He can't leave me now. If you're smart, you'll divorce him voluntarily. Hearing this, I remembered the day of my miscarriage. I had fainted several times from the pain and almost died from excessive bleeding. The doctor called David Miller 10 times, but he didn't answer. He even turned off his phone. The next day, he came back and knelt by my bed, saying he was at a business dinner the night before, that he hated himself for not being able to come see me sooner, and kept slapping himself to punish himself. In reality, while I was in pain, close to dying, he was enjoying himself with another woman. The last bit of hope I had completely vanished at that moment. My heart felt utterly desolate. Seeing my defeated look, Chloe became even more triumphant. She stood with her hands on her hips. Tomorrow, David Miller is holding a wedding for me. It will be grander than the one he had for you. Remember to come to our wedding reception. With that, she left, her chin held high like a triumphant hen. Watching her retreating figure, a sharp pain shot through my chest. The next second, everything went black, and I fainted. When I woke up, it was the next morning. The first thing I saw was David Miller watching over me, his eyes red-rimmed. He pulled me into a hug, his voice choked. "Sarah, you're finally awake. You scared me so much." The scene I'd witnessed in the storage room flashed in my mind, making me feel nauseous. I pushed David Miller away. "I'm fine." David Miller, pushed away, froze for a moment, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. I looked at his tear-filled eyes and asked the question that had been weighing on my mind for days. "Do you remember what I told you before we got married?" Before getting married, I told him that if he ever fell in love with someone else, he should tell me, and I could step aside. But if he ever deceived me, I would disappear from his world forever. David Miller nodded without hesitation. "Why are you suddenly asking about this? Did I do something wrong that upset you?" Then, he stood up with a serious expression and ordered the nurses behind him, "Bring in every woman I've had contact with recently." Soon, there were over a dozen women in my room, including nurses and several members of the household staff. Chloe was also there. She held her belly, her eyes filled with a smug look directed at me. David Miller stood with his hands behind his back, sternly commanding, "Tell my wife exactly how you've interacted with Mr. Miller recently. Be as detailed as possible." "Mrs. Miller, the last time I interacted with Mr. Miller was when I submitted your recent meal plan." "Mrs. Miller, Mr. Miller had me bring the calming aromatherapy from home to the hospital. That's the only time I saw him." "Mrs. Miller, Mr. Miller saw your 4-bag was almost empty, so he called me to change the medication." They reported one after another, almost every interaction related to me. They couldn't help but show envy towards me. When it was Chloe's turn, she said flatly, "I haven't had any contact with Mr. Miller since delivering the fruit basket yesterday." "Mrs. Miller, please don't worry. Mr. Miller's heart belongs only to you." For though they were words of flattery, I heard only pure mockery. I laughed to myself self-deprecatingly and motioned for them to leave. Having seemingly proven his innocence, David Miller seemed much more relaxed. He sat on the edge of the bed, took my hand, and said sincerely, "Sarah, you know I only love you in this life. I would never be attracted to any other woman besides you." I simply hummed in response, ignoring the disappointment in David Miller's eyes and withdrawing my hand. Then, David Miller seemed to remember something and added, "Sarah, I have to go on a business trip tomorrow and won't be able to stay with you, but my phone will be on for you 24/7. Call me if you miss me." His declarations of love seemed sincere, without a hint of falsehood. I suppressed the discomfort in my heart and nodded in response. "Okay, be careful on your trip." I clearly caught a flicker of guilt in his eyes, and then heard his slightly injured voice. "But I really don't want to leave you. Even though it's just for a day, I don't want to be apart from you for SI. Angle second. Once we adopt a child, we might as well hand over the company to him. That way I won't have to travel around and be away from you. If I hadn't known he was actually going to marry Chloe for 7 days, I might have been touched by his words. Finally, David Miller reluctantly kissed my forehead and left the room. The moment he left, I left the hospital. After packing my things at home, I placed a divorce agreement on the living room table and boarded a plane to Switzerland. Before getting on the plane, I deleted and blocked all of David Miller's contact information, cutting him out of my life completely. Sitting on the plane, I watched the city where I had lived for over 30 years get smaller through the window. The heavy stone weighing on my heart finally lifted. David Miller, goodbye forever. The next morning, I arrived safely in Switzerland. After researching online, I chose a guest house to stay in. Meanwhile, David Miller was having his wedding reception with Chloe. Just before stepping into the church, he didn't forget to ask the doctor about my condition. The doctor told him I had been sleeping since he left, instructed everyone not to disturb me, and that they would call him when I woke up. Hearing the doctor's report, he felt relieved and entered the church. But for some reason, my image was still stuck in his mind. Last night, he even dreamed that I had filed for divorce, which woke him up. He called the doctor to confirm I was still sleeping, and only then did his anxious heart calm down. But the unease lingered, and as time passed, it grew stronger. His mind began to drift, and he didn't even hear the officiant ask if he would take the bride. Finally, Chloe shook his hand, bringing him back to reality. He looked at Chloe's loving eyes, but the image that flashed in his mind was of me looking at him with disappointment. Startled, he immediately pulled his hand away from Chloe and ran out of the church. Mr. Miller, the wedding isn't over yet. Where are you going? It was only then that he realized how important I was to him. How could he marry another woman behind my back? Sarah, you have to wait for me. David Miller rushed back to the hospital frantically. After getting out of the car, he ran straight to the room. It wasn't until he looked through the doorway and saw someone lying in bed, covered by a blanket, that his heart slightly calmed down. He pushed open the door and walked in, a gentle smile on his face. Honey, I'm back. The person in bed didn't react. David Miller cautiously pulled back the blanket. The smile on his face froze the moment he saw it wasn't me under the blanket, but a pillow. Where was his Sarah? David Miller's heart clenched with panic. He frantically searched the room for any sign of me. Sarah, Sarah, where are you, Sarah? But there was no trace of me in the room. Anxious, he quickly took out his phone to call me. It immediately told him I was blocked. He tried sending messages, only to find all his contact information had been deleted and blocked. The dream he had last night flooded back into his mind. David Miller's face went pale, and he quickly called the doctor. But the doctor said they didn't know what had happened. After I told them not to disturb my sleep last night, they hadn't entered the room. It wasn't until they checked the surveillance footage that they discovered I had quietly left the hospital less than an hour after David Miller had left. David Miller immediately panicked. He called the police and rushed home. As soon as he arrived home, he ran into the house without hesitation, grabbing a member of the household staff he encountered and demanding, "Where's Mrs. Miller? Did she come back?" "Mrs. Miller, she did come back yesterday, but she left again shortly after. She said she just came back to get something and would go back to the hospital." The staff member was badly frightened by David Miller and spoke with a tremble. David Miller was about to say something when his eyes fell on the divorce agreement on the coffee table. He released the staff member, walked over, and picked up the document with trembling hands. When he saw my name written on the last page, he froze completely, as if his soul had been sucked out. How was this possible? How could his Sarah divorce him? There must be some misunderstanding. David Miller angrily tore the divorce agreement in half and threw the pieces into the air. "Go! Immediately mobilize everyone. You must find Mrs. Miller for me." David Miller commanded the staff member sternly, then rushed out of the living room himself. No matter where his Sarah had gone, he would find her and bring her back. The guest house I chose was near the sea, which I could see every morning when I opened the curtains. The clear blue sea, the sky, and a flock of seabirds flying and hunting above, the scenery was beautiful. I had always loved the sea since I was a child, but my family was poor back then, and I never had the chance to see it. My father was also a gambler, deeply in debt and an alcoholic. Every time he got drunk, he would beat my mother. Several times, if I hadn't called the police in time, her body would have been cold. But luck doesn't last forever. After a study hall session one day, when I returned home from school, I saw my mother lying on the ground, barely clinging to life, surrounded by blood. My father was nowhere to be seen. Later, I called the police to arrest my father, but he vanished from the face of the earth and never appeared again. The pain from my upbringing was branded onto my soul at that moment, tormenting me during the countless nights that followed for 10 years. I hated myself for not being able to take my mother away, to protect her. I hated my mother even more for loving my father so much that she stayed by his side despite his abuse, until her death. All of this led me to distrust love and avoid intimate contact with anyone until David Miller's appearance. CE changed everything. At that time, David Miller had inherited Miller Corp and fell in love with me at first sight. He then pursued me for 5 years. He would always appear when I faced difficulties, helping me, meeting all my material needs, and constantly surprising me. Every year for my birthday, he would celebrate with me and always present me with the most beautiful jewelry in the city. If I liked even one piece, he would be overjoyed, like a favored subject who earned approval. Knowing I liked the sea, he took me to see it once a month, continuing this until we got married. Later, I didn't want to interfere with his work, and it took me a long time to convince him to stop this ritual. David Miller's arrival felt like a ray of light in my dark life, giving me hope and showing me the meaning of living. But he also dealt me the biggest blow, showing me how complex human nature is, that even loving someone to the core cannot prevent infidelity. He even heartlessly had my uterus removed so that another woman's child could be the heir. In the afternoon, I went to the hospital for a checkup. My uterus was indeed gone. Although I already knew the truth, my heart still clenched when I saw the report. The first day I married David Miller, I told him I loved children and hoped to have our own. David Miller smiled dotingly then, holding me and saying he had long wanted to have a baby with me but hadn't mentioned it for fear I didn't want one. But as fate would have it, I struggled with fertility. For the first 4 years of our marriage, no matter how hard David Miller and I tried, how much we worked on improving our health, I couldn't get pregnant. I felt incredibly guilty and often cried late at night. David Miller would hold me and comfort me, sincerely telling me that a child wasn't important, as long as I could live happily and stay by his side. His tone was light and casual, as if he truly didn't care, but I still saw his disappointment. He actually wanted a child. More than I did. But through our persistent efforts, I finally became pregnant with our first baby in June of this year. The moment I found out I was pregnant, it felt like fireworks exploded in my world, and I was overjoyed. I couldn't wait to tell David Miller the news, but he wasn't as happy as I had imagined. He even seemed a little sad. At the time, I didn't understand, thinking he must have had trouble at work. Only now do I realize that he was afraid my child's birth would threaten Chloe's child's right to inherit. And then, later, I had a miscarriage. The child we had longed for was gone just like that. During that time, I fainted from crying several times. David Miller, on the other hand, seemed relieved. Looking back now, he was probably praying for my child to be gone. I suddenly felt a sense of relief that the child was gone. Otherwise, born into a family without a father's love, I couldn't imagine how sad he would be. 7. The scenery in Switzerland was beautiful. I decided to settle here. After arranging for a residence permit, I bought a small villa nearby. Although it wasn't big, the decor was warm and inviting. Even living alone, I wouldn't feel lonely. The following days were quiet and fulfilling. To make the house feel livelier, I got a kitten and a puppy. The kitten always liked to drink my bathwater, so I named him Drip. The puppy liked to carry small pebbles in his mouth, so he was named Pebble. With their company, my previously calm life became less mundane, simply because they were too mischievous and often caused trouble. What I didn't expect was for David Miller to find me here. That day, I had just booked a tour group and was preparing to go skiing in the Swiss Alps. As soon as I stepped out, I was stopped by David Miller, who seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Sarah, you're really here. I didn't recognize David Miller at first. After a month apart, he had lost a lot of weight and looked overly haggard. He was completely different from the spirited, aloof CEO he used to be. The moment he saw me, his worn eyes lit up. He quickly walked over, intending to hug me, but I dodged him. I stepped back a few paces, putting distance between us, and looked at him warily. Don't come any closer. David Miller's steps halted, and a hint of hurt flashed in his eyes. Sarah, what did I do wrong? Why are you treating me like this? I was only on a business trip for one day, and you disappeared from my side without a sound, even leaving me a divorce agreement. Don't you love me anymore? His voice was filled with sorrow, as if he had suffered a great injustice. It seemed he still didn't know I had discovered his affair with Chloe. I took out my phone and played the recording of what Chloe had said in the hospital room that day. Did you think he loves you very much? Actually, he comes to see me every night after you fall asleep. Even when I'm pregnant, he won't stop. To be honest, the day you miscarried, he wasn't at a business dinner at all. He was in bed with me, being intimate. He can't leave me now. If you're smart, you'll divorce him voluntarily. Tomorrow, David Miller is holding a wedding for me. It will be grander than the one he had for you. Remember to come to our wedding reception. David Miller's face instantly went pale. He looked at me in disbelief. She told you everything? I put away my phone and said flatly, now you know why I left you, don't you? For the sake of the years we were married, I won't pursue this matter further. I hope you'll be smart enough not to bother me again. With that, I turned to leave, but David Miller grabbed my hand, shaking his head. Sarah, listen to me. I didn't marry her. You are my only wife. His so-called explanation felt like a joke, making me laugh self-deprecatingly. We're already divorced. Who you marry is your business. You don't need to explain it to me. You should hurry back and take care of Chloe. Her child is probably waiting for you. David Miller S. Hook his head again, explaining, we're not divorced. I didn't sign the divorce agreement. You're still my wife. I can explain about Chloe. It was just a momentary attraction, but I promise, I've always loved you, and that love has never lessened. You know, with my status, many women try to get close. At first, I could firmly refuse, but I'm only human. I couldn't control my physical desires, so. Every word David Miller spoke felt like an arrow piercing my heart, mocking my years of investment and trust in this relationship. I couldn't help it. I raised my hand and slapped him. That's not an excuse for cheating. I told you long ago that if you ever fell in love with someone else, if you had an affair with another woman, you should tell me yourself. But you were involved with her for 3 whole years. You had so many chances to be honest with me during those 3 years, but you didn't. You chose to hide it and even had my uterus removed to prevent me from getting pregnant and make way for her child. The suppressed anger in my heart erupted completely at that moment. My voice involuntarily rose. David Miller was stunned, unsure how to respond. However, he didn't get the chance, as the tour group had arrived at my door and were calling for me to get on the bus. I didn't want to waste time with David Miller. I walked around him and got into the bus. Through the window, I saw David Miller standing there stunned, as if he had lost his soul. But because his back was to me, I couldn't see his expression, and I didn't want to. Our tour guide was a young man named Ethan Fu, who was part Asian and very handsome. Most of the women in the group were there because of his looks. However, he was a bit aloof. Besides answering work-related questions, he didn't respond to anything else. Before we started climbing the mountain, he checked everyone's safety equipment one by one. When he got to me, he gave me a long look. His eyes were a little strange, as if we had met before. But he didn't say anything. After confirming my safety gear was in order, he led us on our way. When I was with David Miller, he didn't allow me to do thrilling activities because he worried my body couldn't handle it. But he didn't know I had always been someone who liked excitement. The more heart-pounding the outdoor sport, the more I liked it. I just didn't want him to worry, so I stopped doing these outdoor activities after we got married. Before this, my favorite was skiing. These past few years, unable to ski, I would always feel a strong urge when I saw videos of others skiing on TV. I never expected to have the chance to ski again. The moment I stepped onto the skis again and glided on the snow, it felt like my soul was set free, and I instantly felt incredibly light. What I didn't expect was that as I was about to reach the finish line, an out-of-control skier would suddenly rush out. He couldn't stop his skis and crashed directly into me. I was knocked to the ground, and the immense force sent my body tumbling uncontrollably downwards, finally hitting the finish line hard. I cried out in pain, my mouth filled with snow. The others rushed forward to check on me. Ethan Fu was at the front. He scooped me up in his arms and took me to a small cabin nearby. "Are you okay?" There was a hint of worry in his clear eyes. I rubbed my sore back and shook my head. "I'm fine, just my back hurts a little. It should be fine in a bit." To my surprise, he frowned. "No, I'm taking you to the hospital for a checkup. Some internal injuries aren't immediately apparent." Then, regardless of my reaction, he took me directly to the hospital. After the x-rays showed I had no major injuries, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at his tense expression, I sincerely thanked him. "Thank you, Mr. Fu, for today. Taking care of you is my job," Ethan Fu said without changing his expression. He nodded. "It's almost 6. I'll take you back to rest." Then, led by Ethan Fu, I returned to my accommodation. After a simple meal, I lay on the bed and fell asleep. That incident seemed to have given Ethan Fu a warning shot. Over the next few days, he was even more cautious, constantly keeping an eye on our every move, afraid of another accident. No more incidents occurred until the end of the tour. As I was saying goodbye to the others, Ethan Fu suddenly called out to me. "If you want to book a tour in the future, you can contact me directly. I can give you a discount." I didn't expect Ethan Fu, who seemed aloof and unapproachable, would actually take the initiative to exchange contact information for money in private. I nodded and exchanged contact information with him. After that, I was about to leave, but he called out to me again. "Are you free this weekend? I'd like to take you out for dinner." This invitation surprised me. I didn't expect Ethan Fu to actually ask me out for dinner. I wanted to refuse, but I changed my mind when I saw David Miller walking over from not far away. "Okay, send me the address then, and I'll meet you there." A hint of excitement flashed in Ethan Fu's eyes. He nodded and left. The moment Ethan Fu left, David Miller blocked my path. "Who was that man? Why did you agree to have dinner with him?" I thought David Miller would have left after that day, but I didn't expect him to have been waiting here for me to return. Seeing me talking to Ethan Fu, he immediately became possessive and rushed over, demanding coldly. I frowned and said flatly, "It's none of your business." "How is it none of my business? We're not divorced yet. I won't allow you to interact with other men." David Miller yelled at me for the first time. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me, as if he would devour me the next second. He startled me, and I instinctively stepped back. Realizing he had lost control, David Miller quickly reined in his emotions and said guiltily, "I'm sorry, I was too emotional just now, but I really can't accept you seeing other men." Saying this, he handed me a report, explaining sincerely, "This is a report from the highest authority. Your uterus did indeed have cancer. I wasn't lying to you. It was because of the cancer that I had it removed. As for Chloe's child, I wanted her to have it just to make up for the regret of you being unable to conceive." I glanced at the report. It indeed had the seal of an authoritative institution, no one could fake that. However, the result surprised me. I didn't expect my uterus to actually have cancer. David Miller hadn't lied to me about that. "Sarah, you are the person I love most. I would never hurt you." David Miller continued to declare his love. "As for Chloe, that was just an accident. I've cut ties with her completely. She won't interfere in our lives anymore. Please come back, okay? I really can't live without you." As he spoke, he reached out to take my hand. I immediately shook him off and put distance between us. You should have heard of the saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. Since you betrayed me, I will never forgive you. Sign the divorce agreement if you want to, don't if you don't want to. Just stop bothering me." But David Miller seemed not to understand. He shook his head. "No, I don't want to be apart from you. We've been together for so many years. Can you really bear to let go of those beautiful memories? You said you would only love me in this life. Why are you leaving me?" Looking at David Miller's hurt expression, my heart remained unaffected. I simply called the police and had him arrested. Then I messaged Chloe, telling her to keep David Miller in line. After that, David Miller really didn't show up again. During this time, Ethan Fu kept asking me out subtly. Although he was indirect, I could tell what he meant. I made it clear that I had just ended a relationship that lasted over 10 years and wasn't ready to start a new one. Ethan Fu wasn't discouraged. He said he could wait because he had already waited for 10 years. It was then that I realized Ethan Fu and I had met before. Back then, I had earned some money shortly after starting work and took a skiing class. Ethan Fu and I met at that time. Ethan Fu, burdened by heavy family responsibilities, went to the ski resort to unwind. But in his haste, he fell and injured his leg. The area where he fell was an unmonitored area, and no one noticed he was in trouble. I happened to see the scene and quickly called the staff. That's how he was rescued. After that, I hadn't seen him again. He said he had been looking for me, wanting to thank me in person, but I seemed to have disappeared, and he couldn't find me. It wasn't until my wedding to David Miller that he saw me on a large screen, but he didn't dare interfere with my life. After hearing his story, I was a little surprised. I didn't expect us to have such a connection. Ethan Fu didn't distance himself after being rejected. Instead, he became my friend, often joining me in outdoor activities, offering me warmth, and becoming another important person in my life. I heard about David Miller again 2 years later. I heard that after he was arrested by the police that day, Chloe personally bailed him out. The two then had a big fight over the incident. In a fit of rage, David Miller pushed Chloe, and as a result, Chloe had a miscarriage. Having lost both love and her child, Chloe couldn't handle it and went insane. She hit David Miller with her car, turning him into a vegetable. Chloe was then sent to a mental institution and spent the rest of her life there. After hearing about their fate, my heart remained unaffected. To me, these people were merely passers-by in my life. They left a mark, but they couldn't keep me.